You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. Watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I am Aireane Montgomery, your host of Millennial Talk II, and we'll be on for the next hour. We're the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. We speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show hosts and guests and not of WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. All right. I want to welcome you guys to the show. As you know, my name is Aireane Montgomery, and I have an amazing guest today, and somebody that I cherish very, very, very deeply, Mr. Herbert Jackson Jr.
Hello.
All right, let's get into it. Can you tell the world a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. This is great. I'm glad to be here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Herbert Jackson Jr. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, or the metro Atlanta area. I grew up in Dunwoody. I went to South Gwinnett High School. After I went to high school, I went to Central State University in Ohio. I taught up there. We'll get into that, all that stuff. I taught up there for 2 years. Now I'm back in Atlanta at Central Gwinnett High School. I'm the band director there. I'm going to my 5th year at Central. And we're here. And that's a little bit about myself.
He's being very modest. Of course, I get to share space with this human being every day. And so I just can't wait until we get into the particulars of what he really does and what type of impact he has on his students, on the community, and those that are around him, including myself. All right, so let's jump into it. Mm-hmm. You consider yourself to be a creative person. I want you to define for me, what is your definition of creativity?
We were talking, and creativity, it's kind of a lot to think about because it's all subjective about how people create and the things that they create and how that looks and the product that they give. But I think creativity is the actual thought behind the art or the thing that you're doing. It's the thought that you're giving yourself of the process behind organizing everything, or the thought behind putting something together or making it abstract, or, all those things I think represents creativity, but it starts with the thought. So I think creativity is that initial thought about how you're going to mold and create anything.
Absolutely. So my question to you is, when did you first find out or discover that you're creative?
I think I found out, I think I knew I was creative in elementary school. I remember going to like art class and really enjoying art and all the hands-on activities that we had. I really enjoyed those things. And then I remember my parents buying me a drum set for Christmas when I was in like elementary school. And I remember putting it together. Like I would take it out the box, I would put it together. I was always inquisitive about certain musical things or art or food and things like that. But I think it was like in elementary school when I finally started realizing I had a creative niche.
Absolutely. I think it's very interesting. I always wondered, does everybody discover their creativity? Is everybody meant to be creative? And how do we really garner our creativity when we are always so standardized and put in a box? Mm-hmm. When we really are trying to do whatever we decide to do with our life purpose. My next question to you is, can you tell us what your preferred method of artistic expression is?
Yeah, so music is my number one. I'm a creative in that space. I think everybody has two. Mm-hmm. I think everybody has at least two creative outlets. So music is my first one, and then cooking is my second one. Like culinary arts is a very close second to music is cooking. So music is my first, and then cooking, culinary arts is my second one.
I definitely can hype Herbert because First of all, I love his food. His food is so good, and I get to eat it on the daily basis. And also, his music is beautiful. And I want you to emphasize, like, when you say you're in music, what does that mean?
Yeah, so like my main career being a band director, I was trained classically, so French horn player, trumpet player, but I also produce in my own, creative artist, where I make beats and albums and things like that. Film score now, I'm working on some film, and yeah, so those are the things that I do. I also compose and arrange music as well. So producing is, one area, and then arranging actual notation of music is something that I do as well.
Wow. Do you think everybody can be creative?
Absolutely. I do think everybody has their own, because it's the thought.
Okay.
It's the thought that is the creative process. So how that looks is subjective. People have their own ways of, having or defining what art is to them. But I do think everybody can be creative because it's that thought behind what they're, producing or, acting out or creating.
So if everybody can be creative, why is everybody not creating?
Right. So it's the influences. It's the, and again, this is subjective, the influences, your environment, having somebody to push you to those creative limits, and really getting out of those boundaries. And we'll talk about that. But I think it's maybe all of those different things: influence of people, where you are in your life, the physical space that you're in. Some of that can block you. Some of that can really harvest like that creative outlet. Resources is a big thing when we start talking about education. The resources that can allow students to be creative. If you don't have those things, you kind of limit how that creative outlet or thought process looks like.
Absolutely. For you, does creating come naturally or does it require effort?
I think it comes naturally. I think I have a natural way of organizing. I think that's one of my biggest things. I can be very organized and put things together. So I think that allows me to be creative naturally because I can see how I want a song to be put together. I can, actually visualize the organization of the notation of, aesthetically, like what I want it to look like, what I want it to sound like, how I want the listener or the audience to perceive the sounds or the music. So that comes naturally to me. It's certain things like the skill of doing it. You have to work at, building the skill level, but the actual creative thought, that comes natural to me. I can organize and I can plan it. I can see it before I even start the actual doing of it.
Okay. Where did your training initially come from in the fine arts world?
It started definitely in elementary school. That initial seed was planted, I believe. I think I could say that the seed was planted, but the actual training probably started in middle school.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely started in middle school. I had the opportunity to be the student conductor at my middle school. Yeah.
Starting off early.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely. And we can get into that. But yeah, I definitely, middle school is where my training started. My band, I had an awesome band director. And then in high school, it just went a little bit further out. My band director then, I had two band directors. My first one, Mr. William Owens, great band director. And he, taught me a lot of different things about conducting and score reading. And then my second band director, Dr. Jimmy McKinley, he really pushed that envelope as far as arranging and composing and things like that. And then, went to college and of course was trained more musically on my instrument, my French horn. And that allowed me to just get training in instrumental music as well, like being in the band, being in the marching band, concert band, having opportunities to play with the Central State University Chorus on their live album. Certain things like that is, where my training, stemmed from.
Absolutely. So can you tell us just a little bit about your music journey thus far?
Yeah, so with all of that training, all of those different things that and it happened so fast, like as I'm saying it, that was, I graduated high school in 2011. And so over 10 years ago, plus elementary school. So it's like, I can recite that just like that as if it was yesterday, but it happened so quickly. But yeah, my musical journey started with primarily in band, playing the trumpet first, and then that was in elementary school.
Okay.
I got put in band class, and then played trumpet fourth and fifth grade.
Okay.
Or third, fourth, and fifth grade, and then in middle school played the trumpet sixth grade year. And then I switched to the French horn. My band director switched me, and again in middle school I was the student conductor. I actually asked my band director randomly one day. I was like, "Can I conduct the band? Can I do the warm up?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so he taught me how to get on the podium. I was playing trumpet at the time, so I would just warm up with the band on my trumpet on the podium. I would count everybody in, and it was great. Like that was really awesome to do that. But that that happened in middle school, and then in college, I had more leadership roles in music. I was the president of my music fraternity, Mu Phi Epsilon, International Professional Music Fraternity. So that kind of, along with those musicians in there, being surrounded by those people was awesome as well. So my music journey kind of continued in college as well. And then now I'm a band director, and now I get to create, arrange, compose, I produce. And I think right now my music journey is kind of shifting more into being the artist that I really envision myself being, just kind of taking all of those different experiences and, that I had in middle school and in high school, and kind of like regurgitating that out into my music, because all of those things, really influence the music that I create, and really the reasons why I create as well.
Absolutely. I do have a question that stuck out to me when you were talking. Why did you change instruments from the trumpet to the French horn? Because a lot of us, I'm an orca dork, or a prior orca dork. I stayed on my violin from 6th through 12th grade. And I wish I was able to take up the cello. I think the cello is probably one of the most beautiful instruments in the world. And I wish I had made a different decision. Did you go and ask your band director to take up a different instrument, or did he suggest that you do that?
So he's okay. So first of all, French horn is hard. That's that's anybody that's out there, band director world, band world, the French horn. That's one of the hardest instruments to play. So it's hard as a middle school director. Well, let me answer your question first. So he definitely suggested that I move to French horn. I played the trumpet, so he was just like, "I'm looking for 5 new French horn players, for the 7th and 8th grade year." I was like, "Hey, I'll do it. Like, that seems interesting." I don't know what sparked my interest in doing that, but I did it. But he definitely initiated that. But I know that's, with that being a hard instrument, like I know that's nerve-wracking for a band director in middle school to say, "Okay, I want to start fresh, new French horn players at this age." So it was myself and 4 other peers of mine, and we all switched from trumpet to French horn.
Absolutely. Do you think that your fine arts classes in school were a necessary part of introducing you to the creative world? And if so, how?
So I think my fine arts classes, and let me say that I'm fortunate to have had the fine arts training and exposure that I've had at a very young, elementary school. My elementary school, I went to a charter elementary school in Dunwoody, the Kingsley Charter. And we had art, we had music, we had general music, we had band. In the general music class was like chorus. So essentially chorus, general music, art, band. And so all of those different things, all of the students got exposed to that. So I can definitely say I'm fortunate to have had that experience, to have access to all of those different fine arts classes. And I think that definitely played a huge part into my creativity, because it was so refreshing. It was so free to be in that space. I remember going to art class, and mind you, I can't draw, I can't paint, can't do anything like that. But I just remember going into art, and I love being there. I'm the first one putting my apron on. I'm getting my station organized, and I'm having a great time. And I think it was because the teachers were able to allow us that space to, to create and to learn, and, to express, the things that, and I don't remember the things that I was going through, on hand, but I'm sure that there was things that were going on that students, in the elementary world need to like express or do, or,
Right.
Draw and scribble and run around and paint and, make music and do chorus. I think that was very essential to who I am now and the type of music I create and the different environments that I give my students, to be able to have that free space. So I do think that was, very influential and almost critical to, being able to make music and to be a creative.
Okay, so that was gonna pretty much, you led me to my next question, which is, what are some of the things that you particularly liked about your fine arts classes that you think might have had an influence on you choosing music as your career? Because when you get into, I just think it's an amazing opportunity to really get to use your creativity as a career choice. I think a lot of us, don't even consider really utilizing our creativity to monetize it and to do something that feels good to us, feels natural to us, and to really follow our purpose and really showing the world who we are.
Yeah.
So what did you like, about your fine arts class? Because clearly you're a teacher now. Clearly they had some sort of influence on you. I'm just, I'm rather curious about that part.
I think I liked my teachers. They were great. They were just open. I think they, being creative themselves. Like they were, I can't remember my art teacher's name, but I know for a fact that she did art outside of teaching. My music teacher in elementary school, which is crazy, her name is Carol Bell. Like that is the perfect name for a music teacher. But yes, she was our music teacher in elementary school, and she had music outside of, I think she played piano at a church and, did some other work outside of the school building. So I think I like the teachers. They allow me to be creative with them. I remember standing over, Miss Barrel's shoulder in, general music class, like trying to be on the piano or asking her about what, how to play the piano, kind of just being inquisitive and kind of like walking, like she let us walk around the room. She had keyboards around the room. So you could be in the general circle, or if you wanted to play on the keyboard for class, she would just give you some headphones and you could just play on the keyboard in class while everybody else was doing general music, circle time and things like that. So I think it was the teachers that I really enjoyed the most. I think my band director's name, Mr. Honeycutt, I believe that was his name in elementary school. Cool guy, like very just, mellow, a bunch of elementary students, probably loud and doing all types of crazy stuff. He was just let us kind of do it and let us explore our instruments and music and let us write on the board, questions or anything that we wanted to do. He would just kind of let us have that space to do it, whether that was on our instruments or in general music class, Miss Bell, or being in art class as well. So I think it was the teachers that I enjoyed the most because they didn't, in other classes, you got to sit down. You got to.
Except my class, and I'm social studies, and they get up and live their best life, and we debate and argue. But I do see what you're saying.
Right. Like you got to,
arts class.
You got to sit down and you have to listen to the teacher. She's up teaching. But I think in those spaces, I was able to just kind of like just breathe from it all.
Yes.
Because I was definitely hyper in elementary school. Just couldn't sit down all the time.
Me too. I was a daydreamer. Okay, so do you have a favorite music teacher? If so, explain how they have an impact on you or had an impact on you.
Favorite music teacher? Oh my goodness.
Maybe you can say two.
Yeah, because
I'll give you two.
Oh man, I think so, and we were just talking about this with Carmen. We were in middle school. My middle school band director, Mr. Terry Shores. I think that's when I really fell in love with band was in middle school.
Okay.
He was phenomenal band director. Took us on trips. I was the student conductor. It was like the environment was great. We performed well. We just had fun, and he had fun on the podium with us. It was always a great time to be in Mr. Shores. So Mr. Shores is definitely my first one. And then, oh man, it's so many. I'm gonna have to go with Dr. J, Dr. Jimmy McKinley, Mr. Mac. He really, brought me to the fold of being, because at that point I knew I wanted to be a band director. And this is my junior year of high school. So he was really pushing me to those points about what that band director life looks like. As a drum major, it was certain situations with parents, or he was having like those different conversations with administration. He would let me be in the office. He didn't dismiss me from that space because he knew I wanted to be a band director. So he allowed me to kind of experience that with him. And so I think that appreciation can definitely make it a number two, because as one of my favorite teachers in the band world, because he allowed me to be in that space with him. He allowed me to, you want to be a band director, let me show you what that's like. Are you arranging your music? Let me see you arrange something. Let me show you my arrangements. So it's not like he was teaching from a place of non-experience. Like he was doing the exact same things that he was telling me to do as well.
Absolutely. I want to talk about some of my
I'm about to say, what is your
fine arts teachers. Shout out to Alton C. Cruz Middle School Orchestra. I would say Miss Mellard and Miss Smelk were some of my and Mr. Gill were some of my favorite music teachers. What was so crazy is I want to say this year I was getting my nails done, and I saw this lady staring at me. I mean, like she was like staring at me hard. And I'm like getting my nails done. I'm like, it's cool. I don't know who this lady is, but she's staring at me. And so I got up to pay, and she walks up to me and she was like, Aireane, do you know who I am? I'm like, is that you, Miss Miller? She was like, yes. I was like, I'm sorry. I still even had like, PTSD. You're not allowed to wear nails when you play the violin. So me getting my nails done was signaling to her that I was not on my violin anymore. And so I was like, I know, like I don't play the violin anymore. I make beats. I'm a producer, but I still really utilize string in, my music. And so it was just good to really have that family and really be a part of something that I won't even consider extracurricular. I think saying like, band, orchestra, any type of fine arts is extracurricular. I think that does it a big disservice, because to me that was curricular. And I really do believe it needs to be really utilized as really a core class at points, because I don't think that fine arts classes get the due diligence and the justice that they really deserve. My next question to you is, tell us your experience in band, or you can talk about being a band director. How, when you were in band, you kind of talked about this, you hit on this before, how did it catapult you to your career ambitions now? Because not only are you a band director, you do a lot of stuff, even incorporating the band within your other career ambitions. So can you speak on that a little bit?
Yes, definitely. And I definitely want to piggyback on kind of what you said about you being an orchestra, influence the music that you make, or even, remembering those teachers, seeing them. So I think that has a huge a major point into, like you were saying about what fine arts classes mean and how they are related to the other disciplines. We were in class, this week, and I was teaching them about some rhythms and triplets and things like that. And I was actually breaking the math down, and it reminded me of, middle school, I was really bad at fractions. I could not get them together. I'm not sure why, but once my band director, I don't know why we were after school, but we were after school, he was explaining, the same thing, like rhythm and fractions and whole and half and a 16th. And so that made me understand my fractions way better. And, it made me understand like, oh, I have a whole, I can take that in half. Now I got a half, I can take that in a fourth. So I think all of those different aspects are important, in fine arts, that maybe, I don't know if core teachers understand that part. I'm not sure if it's important that, they understand it to that, and, that depth, but that is important. That's things that we do as fine arts teachers, is make those correlations between art in history,
Mm-hmm.
because just as history is going on,
Mm-hmm.
there's I mean, just look at it now. COVID has happened. We hear songs now
Right.
that reference COVID, that
Right.
reference, you know, all of those different things. So as history goes on, music and art and all of those different things are telling that story of history. So fine arts has that extra kind of fishing bait for students to kind of understand, this is what your history teacher is telling you.
Right.
This is the music that came out of that, or this is the art that came out of this. This person was, you know, part of this war or whatever, you know, social studies, but they were an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So in war, they created this, you know, this poem or this song, you know, that's referencing the thing. Like, those are connections that students are going to like jump right in the deep end to get, because they can relate, or the story is interesting, or they get to create something. So I think, you know, I just wanted to hit on that point, that that's very important. And that also influenced why I'm the type of band director that I am today, of telling students and making those connections so that they can understand what's going on in the real world, or they can understand what's going on in their ELA classes. You know, I was we was working on a piece in band class, and I had asked the students, I'm like, what, the composer alluded to this type of style at the end of the piece. He alluded to that in the beginning. And then we started talking about, you know, what does allude mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so now we're in language arts class. Now we're talking about how an author in a novel can allude to something that happens later on in the story.
Right.
You know, so now they're understanding that, oh, snap, this is what my teacher been saying all along.
Right.
I just never understood it. I just never put the pieces together about what that looks like. So when I reference, hey guys, this rhythm or this style, and right now in the piece, we already went over it. He alluded to what was going to happen in the beginning of the piece. And so now the students like, oh yeah, I just play it like that. But also in the deeper end, they can go back to language arts and, oh, what does allude mean? Oh, boom, we talked about this in band class. Boom, allude is this, and the story reference. So it's all those components that I try to, you know, give my students that type of learning to like be able to like think for themselves, being able to connect those dots so that you can go back and like put everything together for yourself and kind of create your own learning, and knowing how you learn and knowing how that looks, what that looks like for you. So I think having teachers like that and having the space to experience that with my teachers influences why I am the band director I am today, versus just getting on the podium, you know, doing the band director norms. I like to go that extra mile with giving them a space to, no, you're going to think, like you have to like know what this means. I'm going to give you a quick history lesson. I'm going to give you a quick language arts lesson about what this means and what that looks like in music.
Yes. Teachers, y'all on notice. Y'all on notice. Y'all got, if y'all not making connections to other core classes or elective classes, what are you doing? We are whole and complete people, and we're going to be whole and complete educators. I think it's very, very important to really be an overall educator. How do we make these connections? How do we make this content relevant? If I'm a social studies teacher and you're a band director, how do we make sure that we can coexist in this school, in this space, and really teach this philosophy? So speaking of,
I want to ask, do you do like creative things in class? Like, what do you do?
Okay, so I am a creative, and it was and what's so sad is, you know, there was a point in my life, I want to say when I was going through my 20s, where I really just did not believe I was that creative. I knew that I was in orchestra. I played my violin, but to be honest and be fair, I could have definitely given my violin a little bit more je ne sais quoi, if you so to speak. I, you know, realized that there was a lot of, you know, places and creativity that I didn't even think about utilizing. And I definitely want to ask you some questions about being culturally responsive or culturally relevant to your students and how important that can be. So when I really gotten around you, to be honest. See, now I gotta hype him up. I was able to really express myself creatively because I was around a creative person every day.
Yeah.
And what I decided to start doing in class, well, I was already doing a lot of this stuff, was we started a podcast where my students could really tell their own personal stories, especially in social studies, where we know that a lot of marginalized ethnic groups are typically left out in history. I wanted them to be able to have a space where they can authentically express themselves and tell the true story, rather than hoping that these so-called, experts that are not a part, of this particular ethnic group or gender or whatever it is, does not get the chance to tell their story, but they're able to tell their story. Yeah. We've utilized music, even I think of Atlanta. Atlanta is, they said we ain't from Atlanta, but I'm very much, let me get this straight now. I'm very much Atlanta. Okay. Definitely went to school in Gwinnett County. Definitely was raised. There was times where I was raised on the South Side. There's been times I've been raised in Atlanta, went to Clark Atlanta University. It don't get too much more Atlanta than this. Speaking of that, but Atlanta has such a great influence on Black culture. Black culture is Atlanta. And so we utilize certain songs that, my students might be listening to. Lil Baby. Let's look at the political message in Lil Baby's music, because he's very, very much an activist. And so I'm able to utilize key components of certain, creative genres to really show how the humans are expressing their experience through creativity. And so it's been a really great journey being able to do that. And I, leaps and bounds, there's so many things, so many lessons. Like I've taught on Kanye West. I think Kanye is the quintessential manifestation king. Like literally, if we're talking to some of the students about watching the documentary, watching Kanye film his life, even from the beginning when he was just making beats, when nobody really respected him as a rapper, to him now being a mogul in rap, in fashion, and film, and just in every arena. I think it's very important to show students, even my contemporary issues class, what's really going on out here and what's really going on in their particular cultures, making it very culturally relevant. I think that, that's important. I have a question for you. So as a band director and musician, what is your teaching philosophy?
My teaching philosophy is to use music as a way to get to the next level or adventure in their life. I hone in on experience because I feel like doing an experience is the best teacher, or the best way to teach or to learn, is by doing that thing. So that's a main component of my philosophy, is getting students, using music to help students get to that next level through experience. The band has went, we just performed at the Hawks game, and that was, the experience. It wasn't like, of course they played well, the dancers, everything was like, all the pieces were together and was great. But I just look at the experience that these students had, seeing them in the arena, walking around, being themselves, all the, bamboos, they walking around together, getting food, watching the game, some buying souvenir, but it's the experience. They're going to remember that forever. Now they're going to know, oh, I could just go to an NBA game, or I can experience my life like this, or these are things that I want to, show my kids, or these are the things that I want to just continue to do, or just appreciate. I just appreciate having to be able to come out and play my instrument on the NBA floor, NBA space. So I think that's one of my philosophies, is, that experience, and getting students to use music to get to the next level. Each student is not going to be a band director. Each student is not going to go to college to play in a band, or this may be the last time This student may play their instrument. Some students may play lifelong, but I don't try to force that onto a student, because that music can look completely different.
Right.
Later on. Lil Wayne, he was in the band.
I didn't know that.
He was in the band, and just look how that turned out.
Right.
Maybe he wasn't in a symphony orchestra or played like, anything like that, but he became a successful, hip hop artist and creative. So, it's things like that where, all you gotta do is plant the seed. I'm just giving you this experience for right now, because later on that can manifest into something different. I was telling one of my students, he wants to be a mechanical engineer. He wants to be an engineer. So, he plays trombone. And I was telling him, like, this experience could really turn on its head for the better. Just imagine your instrument gets made in a factory.
Right.
Con Selmer has these factories in Indiana, these Bach factories. And so they make all these different instruments. Those instruments are made by machinery.
Right.
That machinery gets created and managed by engineers.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how that could really, I'm a trombone player. Now I'm the manufacturer engineer for the equipment that makes trombones. So it's like all of those different experiences, and just kind of, again, creating and connecting those dots for students. It could really turn on its head, and you don't know how that manifests in the future for students. Just by being in band right now, we're getting the experience to see what music is like and how it's expressed and everything like that. So it's the experience that goes along with the teaching philosophy that I have as well.
Mr. Jackson, I ain't gonna call you Herbert right now. I think he's too humble at points, and I really appreciate, your humility. But let's get into how much these seniors have gotten in scholarships for band this year. I want to say, and last time it was close to $1 million.
It's like it was
$1.8 million this year. And then we just got 2 extra scholarships for our dancers
at Wilberforce University
for I want to say $40,000 a piece.
Yeah.
So that's adding to it. So it's so important that the exposure is there.
Yeah.
I think there's times where we don't realize, like, certain schools across the nation will first cut a fine arts department before they cut anything else. They'll cut a fine arts department thinking that, this is not necessary. But when we're thinking about our students, and I thought this was so interesting this year, let's say, like, I graduated in 2009, and I did receive scholarships, but not to the extent of these students that are receiving scholarships today. And so I graduated with 3.5 AP scholar. But when I'm seeing recently, the recent phenomenon is students are getting scholarships, even academic, especially to HBCUs, with as low as a 2.3, 2.0. And we think the cookie cutter, smart student with a GPA is the one that should get the scholarships. They don't utilize, or even take into account their creativity, back in the day, but it's a new day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Speak on that. Speak on these scholarships that these kids have gotten.
So the seniors are, we're probably at close to $2 million worth of scholarship that these students, combined academic and band, that these students have gotten for college. And again, it's the push, it's the exposure, it's the knowing, how do I want my life to pan out? And on a, more serious note, it's like HBCUs or even colleges in general, your bands, your chorus, ensembles, those are going to be your biggest organizations on campus. So it only makes sense that, universities fund those programs, because that's recruitment. Those are students that are coming into, and these are students that are not even just music majors. These are students that are going to be have a variety of majors on campus. So, your chorus, your band is going to be your larger ensembles. It's unfortunate that districts, on a secondary level, doesn't really understand that, fine arts isn't as important as that. Because if you understood that a university's or the largest organizations are going to be your band students, your orchestra students, your choir student, chorus students, then you would make sure that those students are getting that type of training, because that's, more funds that they can get to go into college. So again, it's using their skill to kind of hone in on like, oh, I can go to this school for this, or I can go to this school. All I got to do is keep playing my instrument. Oh, wow. What does it look like to play my instrument in college? Oh, I can do this. I can travel more.
Yeah.
I can experience all these. And, at Central State University, we traveled. I went to the Bahamas marching band. We were in Ohio, so we went through every crevice of Ohio, Toledo, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, all these different cities in Ohio. So that's traveling there. Chicago, we went there. Pennsylvania, we came to Atlanta. Like you get St. Louis, like we went to all these, just being in the band. We played for Earth, Wind and Fire in Chicago. Like it's crazy. And so
orchestra do better.
So I tell these I tell these students, I'm like, yo, like, when the last time I was going to go to the Bahamas?
Yes.
Never been since that time.
Isn't that when you got your passport?
The university paid for the passport. So now, not only did I go to the Bahamas, now I have this passport, this thing. I can go anywhere I want to.
Right.
I could go around the world. I have the thing that I need. You know what I'm saying? When was the last time that I was going to even think about getting a passport? Before the Bahamas. It wasn't on my radar. You know what I'm saying? So it's like those experiences that we got in college and got in high school and got in middle school, it really propels us who we are as people. We were just talking about how we're talking about the importance of fine arts and music and things like that, and the lack of, the support and resource that some districts have. Everybody experiences those things.
Right.
You're not going to ever not experience music,
right,
or art, or down to the car you drive.
Right.
There was somebody that creatively drew and designed and had some sort of way of putting that car together. There was a sound engineer that made sure that your car, the music is bumping, like the speakers are. So every little component that in our everyday lives is surrounded by some sort of creativity. You wake up on a Saturday morning,
right,
open your doors, you got Anita Baker playing, like that's a vibe. Like that music is setting that space for you. Imagine if you didn't have that.
What would a world be without music?
How stressed you would be. That art, we have art around now.
Yeah.
Imagine having just blank walls, or no type of art, or no type of sculpture, or no, you see a city skyline. That's designed. That was somebody that creatively planned how the aesthetics of. So we experience it all the time. Elevator music, you experience it all the time. We listen to our music on the phone. We taste food. That's a culinary artist doing that.
Right.
So all throughout our lives, in every avenue, we experience music. So why is it that it's not being, supported in a capacity where, we experience every day?
Right. So this question I was going to ask you as a follow-up question, that you kind of answered it within this question. So since you're saying that fine arts is not prioritized in K through 12 public education, what are your recommendations in doing so? Like what are your recommendations?
So I think the biggest thing is figuring out what type of music, and I'm saying music because it's so natural for me to say it, but what type of art is going to, be dominant in that specific school or area. Because some districts or, some schools favor, art, like drawing and painting and sculpting and digital design over, music. And that's okay. Some schools have great orchestras that dominate the school over, students want to be in orchestra rather than band. And that's okay. Guitar, music tech. I think it's important to figure out what type of creative outlet or fine arts class is going to be needed for that particular school, because it looks different. And I think that's important as well, versus I'm going to just give you band or chorus and this. You can just do art class. But what if the students don't want to do art?
Right.
What if the majority of the school wants to be music producers?
Mm-hmm.
So why can't we invest that money? So I think the first thing is figuring out what the need is, what type of art.
The good old needs assessment.
Right.
The good old needs assessment.
And then you support it. That could be, of course, the main thing would be financial support, making sure the resources are there.
Mm-hmm.
But also the moving components, such as, if you're having an after school activity,
Mm-hmm.
do the students have rides?
Where's the activity bus at?
Where's the activity bus at? If you have other things where you need more parent involvement, what is going to be that support to get the parents to see the importance? Because from a teacher standpoint, dealing with parents is a whole nother it's a whole nother job sometimes, parents, getting in contact with all of those different things. So to be able to run your class and your program and then get into parental involvement, you really do need support to making sure that happens. So parental support, financial support, and then making sure you have the materials and the staff needed to make sure, to have that happen. It doesn't make sense. And this is not my situation, so I don't want to, I want to say that.
Caveat.
I'm very fortunate of the school that I work at. I love Central Gwinnett. So, but this is not my situation, but this is a situation that I've encountered with other friends and colleagues. And, before I got to Central, when that support is not there, when you have one teacher that's the music teacher, the art teacher, the guitar teacher, it's so hard. Because now it's a daycare service. Now I can't even really pull the creativity out myself to give to the students, because I'm now just being a manager of students. I'm not really giving, I don't have the time, or I don't have the energy, because it's a lot. It's a lot. So having the staffing support to be able to, you can have an art teacher, even if it's part-time, you can have a band director that comes in. Elementary school, Mr. Honeycutt, he went to, because it was Kingsley Elementary, it was Chestnut, it was Austin, Vanderlyn. It was 4 elementary schools. And he went around on different days. So he was with us like maybe 2 days, and we go to the different schools, and then we had our concerts together. It was all the 4 elementary schools.
That's so cute.
Yeah, because we all played. He's not going to teach us different songs. Like we're all learning the same. We're all learning the same music. So we would have our concerts together. So even if districts were creative, because we just talked about creativity is the thought process. So if districts were creative about what that type of fine arts curriculum looks like, it's going to be way better. It's going to have a better outcome for the students.
All right. So my next question is, how important is it for you to be a culturally responsive band director? How important is it should this be prioritized, or should it not be prioritized by other fine arts teachers?
I think it should definitely be prioritized. And I can say, music or fine arts has an advantage because we can easily talk about the history or the music components that make up either a style of music or a type of music. So I think that, that's kind of like the big umbrella, or the easiest way to say, hey, I have majority this type of Hispanic students, or this type of Black students, or African students. I'm going to just play that type of music. But what if that student doesn't even listen to that type of music? What if that student, who may be an African student, or a type of Asian student, what if they listen to hip hop? What if they listen to other? So you have to be careful with what that culturally relevant, like, are you being creative to even go beyond thinking about, I'm just looking at just who they
mainstream,
are, their culture, or they're Black, they probably listen to hip hop music. No, that's not true. So it goes beyond just the genre. Now that does help. If the students say, hey, I want to play this music, let the students really decide that. We were in jazz band class the other day, and having talks about culture, I feel like that's just as important as playing the music that these students come from or that they relate to.
Yes.
Just even having those conversations about who they are.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking, and the rehearsal was going pretty okay, and I could tell the students were a little bit fatigued, and we're just kind of ready for the day to end. And I just kind of stopped. We stopped playing, and I just started asking them, do they know about their family? Like, where did their family come from? Where does mom and dad come from? And we just went down the line, and we just started understanding each other. We relate to a lot of different things. I have one student, he is half Mexican, half Guatemalan. And he was just kind of telling me like, yeah, Mr. Jackson, some of our music in Guatemala has some African influence with like the style. And I was like, I would have never known that.
Right.
Like I would have, like, we talk about it, there's research behind it. We have music that relates, but to hear a student talk about that and say, yeah, that I know that because my dad is this, my dad is that, you start to understand the dynamic. Like, oh, well, maybe if we do play a certain type of music, he could relate, or he does have some, some value that he can add based on who he is as a person and the type of experiences that he had, and each student has that. So I think along with playing the music that the students want to play, or playing the music that relates to them, it's also having those conversations with them about who are they? Who are like, what type of culture do you come from? Some students, you'll be surprised. They'll be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know when my mom is from this place, but I don't know my grandmother, or I don't know. And so now you start to understand, okay, well, what type of music would you like to create or do? Or I actually would want to get into a little bit more of this music. So now you're like, oh, you never experienced it.
Yes.
But now you have an idea about what you want to experience. So I think all of that is encompassed in what culturally relevant teaching is.
I think teachers, well, I'm not going to say I think teachers, I know teachers have a responsibility.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to your students to provide culture responsive pedagogy in the classroom, whatever class you are. I don't care if you're math, science, if you're social studies, if you're language arts, if you're fine arts, if you're, a CTE class where you're doing, engineering, fashion, you have, kids need to be seen, students need to be seen within the content. I think that is imperative, and so I want to talk to, because speaking of culture responsive and speaking of different genres, can you really talk about who you are as Trey Price? And we don't have much time. We're coming down to a little less than 10 minutes, and talk about the genre that you are in, because it's not a typical genre of millennial black folks in, I want to say mainstream.
Facts.
And then also plug yourself and tell them where they can find you, because you are on Apple Music, you're on SoundCloud, and your music is absolutely phenomenal.
So I'll start with for time, like, you can find my name is Trey Price, so TR3PRISE. You can find me on Apple Music, Spotify, TikTok, IG, all the streaming platforms, YouTube Music. I have an album out right now called Teacher Edition. That's the album that I completed. It took me 2 years to complete that album. I was getting my master's degree while producing that, so all of those songs relate to all the different things that I was going through getting that degree. But yeah, you can find me on all the streaming platforms. The music that I create, I loved rap and hip hop, but it was never played in the house like that, because my parents were Christian. They were pretty religious. I mean, we would play, some music in the car, but pretty much around the house it was gospel music.
Okay.
And then we went to a conservative church, so a lot of in the conservative church is more of the classical, hymnal music. So that's pretty much what I listened to, unless I was at school or listened to the radio. I was, that's when I found my pop music, or MTV. And so that's when I started hearing like the pop music that was out, because MTV at the time was playing the music videos in the morning. So I would watch the music videos, and it was all the different pop music. And then along with hip hop and things like that. And
Can you repeat your name one more time? I don't want to repeat your name and spell it.
It's Trey Price, so TR3PRISE. Prise.
Absolutely. I just want for everybody to
Yeah,
know.
you got to get hip.
Yes.
And then I started getting into Daft Punk.
Uh-huh.
They're from France,
Mhm.
and phenomenal. You know, that's probably one of my favorite artists. And then that's what got me hooked to Kanye, because Kanye sampled some stuff from Daft Punk, and then it just rolls downhill from there. And then I started getting into Flume, Cashmere Cat, Sam Gillatry. I remember when Alina Baraz came out. So all of those different.
So what are those genres that you're talking about? Just in case people don't know,
Yeah.
what is your genre?
So my genre is electronic. So I specialize in electronic music. Definitely some influences of hip hop and trap, but you're going to get that electronic sound. I'm definitely the synthesizer world. I love those. Yeah, so you know, electronic music is my main genre, but I definitely pull from the band aspect, using like live instruments, or giving like the beats from like a drum line or things like that. All of those different aspects, you know, make up the music that I create today.
Right. Okay, so my last question for you, well, I won't say last, but we're coming towards the end, is, you know, what advice do you have for budding creatives stuck in non-creative careers? Because I think it's very, very important um, to allow yourself an opportunity to express your creativity.
Yeah, so, you know, my advice would be to start small. When it's trying to figure out what type of creative you want to be, or the space you want to be in. If you want to you know, be a painter, you know, take a day to go to the museum.
Yes.
Take a day to walk around and take pictures of art that you see on like a mural on the wall or something. Then it's going to start to spark your interest.
Yes.
It's going to start to, you know, plant that seed, like, oh, you know what, I always wanted to do a picture of flowers or something. So now you're out taking pictures of flowers. Just kind of gets an idea. Versus like, I'm about to buy all the paint equipment in the world. Like, you can like start small. Go see a show.
Yes.
Go see a play.
Right.
Go see a ballet. Go, you know, go to a concert. You know, even if you're at a, you know, high school or middle school, go see the middle school play.
Yes, I agree.
Go see the orchestra concert. Go see the band concert. Go see the art gallery. You know, instead of on your planning period, you're sitting in your room. Go walk down the art hallway and see, like, oh my gosh, these kids are creating all these different things. It's going to spark your interest. It's going to, you know, you'll be surprised how the students are going to influence you to be the creative that you want to be, because although the students may not be in the fine arts classes, they're still creating. They're still doing the things that they want to do in a creative outlet, whether that's on IG or TikTok. Dancing, that's an art. So they're creating that, doing the videos, all the different that's art, that's creating, that's creativity. They're doing it every day. So even seeing the students, you know, interact with it, it can give you some inspiration. Or, you know, just start small, taking a walk, going to a concert, going to a museum, going to a different city. You know, even when you travel, we try to make sure that we go see a museum or some type of creative way to like enjoy the trip. So I think that's important as well. Just wherever you're at, just kind of add that extra, you know, outlook and experience for the creativity side.
Well, we're coming to our last minute. I want to tell you guys that as we get to know each other, including, you know, my audience, I'm going to give you guys access to the people that are closest around me that are so amazing. I think it's important to keep your circle small, but with heavy hitters that can continue to push you and to inspire you to be your greatest self and to live out to your fullest potential. I hope that you got the gems from this conversation. I really did. I continue to learn from Herbert every single day. And I'm just so happy to be able to be in company with him, because his creativity allows me to be creative. And then I rub off on other people. And I think expressing your creativity is probably the most rewarding thing that you can do in your life. So thank you so much for being here with us. And we really do appreciate the love and support. And we look forward to seeing you in the next Millennial Talk II. My Instagram is at Miss Monty, MISSMONTYYYY. And eventually I'll be putting out my own EP. I am in I'll do more of an R&B feel. So yeah, I look forward to being able to do that, and love you very much.
Bye, guys.